The first time I heard someone begging beneath our bedroom floor, Mason was asleep beside me, and I realized I might know absolutely nothing about the alpha I loved. It was 2:13 in the morning when the sound woke me. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from somewhere below us. I sat upright, holding my breath while rain whispered against the windows of our old Massachusetts house. Beside me, Mason Blackwood slept on his back, one arm resting where I had been seconds earlier. 3 more knocks came through the floorboards. My stomach tightened. Mason. His eyes opened instantly. Not groggy. Not confused. Alert. What? Did you hear that? Silence filled the room. Mason listened, his expression unreadable. Pipes. Pipes knocked 3 times. Old houses make strange noises. He reached for my hand, his thumb brushing my knuckles with the familiar gentleness that had always made me feel safe. Usually, that touch could quiet every anxious thought in my head. Tonight, it couldn't. Does this house have a basement? I asked. Mason went still. Barely a second. Most people would have missed it. I didn't. No, the answer came too quickly. By morning, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined everything. Mason made coffee exactly the way I liked it. 2 sugars, too much cream. He straightened my crooked collar before leaving for work and gave me that small private smile he saved for me. Dinner at 7? Sure. He touched my shoulder. Love you, Noah. Love you too. The words felt strangely heavy after the door closed. I waited until his SUV disappeared beyond the maple trees before searching the house. Nothing looked unusual. Kitchen, laundry room, pantry. Then I noticed scratches across the hardwood behind the wine rack. Thin curved marks like something heavy had been moved repeatedly. No way, I whispered. I pushed. The rack shifted 2 inches. Behind it was a narrow black door I had never seen before. A steel lock sat beneath the handle. My pulse climbed. Mason had lied. I was still staring when his voice came from behind me. Noah. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Mason stood in the kitchen doorway. You're home. Brilliant observation, Noah. Really excellent. Work. His gaze moved from me to the hidden door, and something changed in his face. Not anger exactly. Fear. What is that? I asked. Nothing you need to worry about. That's not an answer. Mason crossed the room and moved the wine rack back into place. Promise me you'll leave it alone. Why? His jaw tightened. Because I need you to trust me. I laughed once, without humor. Trust usually works better before the secret basement. His eyes met mine. Never open that door, Noah. That night, Mason left for what he called an emergency meeting. I lasted 11 minutes. I moved the rack, crouched beside the door, and pressed my ear against the cold wood. Nothing. I almost felt ridiculous. Then something shifted downstairs. A breath. Footsteps. I whispered, hello. Silence. Then a man's voice answered from beneath our home, frightened and unmistakably real. Please don't tell Mason I spoke to you. For 10 full seconds, I forgot how to breathe. The voice beneath the floor had not sounded threatening. It had sounded terrified. Who are you? I whispered. A pause followed, long enough that I wondered if the stranger had changed his mind. Caleb. His voice was barely audible through the door. Please. You should go upstairs. That was exactly the kind of sentence guaranteed to make me do the opposite. I searched the frame, then noticed a spare key hanging behind the wine rack, hidden beneath a wooden ledge. Mason was either becoming careless, or some part of him expected this secret to be discovered eventually. The lock clicked. Cold air drifted up a narrow staircase. I turned on my phone flashlight and descended about 12 steps into a finished basement that absolutely should have appeared somewhere in the 2 years I had lived here. At the bottom stood another door. This one opened into a small room with pale walls, a bed, a desk, bottled water, books, clean clothes, and enough food for several days. It was not the nightmare my imagination had constructed. Somehow, that made it worse. A young man stood beside the bed. Caleb looked around my age, maybe 25, with light brown hair and exhausted blue eyes. A silver band circled one wrist. He immediately pulled his sleeve over it. You are Noah, he said. My stomach dropped. How do you know my name? Mason talks about you. Mason talks to you? Caleb looked toward the stairs. You really need to leave. I stepped closer, but kept several feet between us. Is he keeping you here? Caleb said nothing. Can you leave? His silence answered for him. Anger rose hot behind my ribs. Did Mason do this? Caleb swallowed. He says I belong here. For words. for horrible words that rearranged everything I thought I knew about Mason Blackwood. The man who asked before borrowing my laptop. The alpha who never entered my office without knocking. The man who had once driven 40 miles because I mentioned, casually, that I hated being alone during thunderstorms. That Mason had locked another Omega beneath our home. I can get you out. Caleb's head snapped up. No, Caleb. You do not understand. Then explain it. He glanced toward the ceiling. There is no time. Right on cue, the front door opened upstairs. I froze. Mason was supposed to be gone until midnight. Heavy footsteps crossed the kitchen. Caleb went pale. Go. I hurried upstairs, locked the basement door, replaced the key, and shoved the wine rack back just as Mason entered the hallway. He had removed his suit jacket, leaving his white dress shirt rolled neatly at the forearms. Powerful, composed, unmistakably alpha, he seemed to fill the narrow hallway simply by standing there. His eyes found mine. You are awake. Could not sleep. His gaze lowered. Dirt streaked the toes of my socks. Fantastic. Apparently betrayal came with housekeeping evidence. Mason looked toward the wine rack, then back at me. For one frightening second, neither of us spoke. Then he approached slowly. Noah. I resisted the instinct to retreat. He stopped several feet away, deliberately leaving space between us. Whatever you think you discovered tonight, he said quietly, you do not have the whole story. Then tell me. Something painful crossed his face. I cannot, or will not. Mason exhaled. Both. I hated that his voice still made me feel safer when every fact told me it should not. Is Caleb your prisoner? His expression changed at the name. Not guilt. Alarm. He spoke to you? Answer me. Mason looked at me for a long moment. I am asking you to trust me one more night. That is convenient. I know. He did not touch me. He did not order me upstairs. He simply moved the wine rack aside, took another lock from the cabinet, and secured the hidden door a second time. Then Mason looked directly at me. Tomorrow, Noah, everything changes. By sunrise, Mason had turned our relationship into a performance, and the strangest part was that he expected me to smile through it. I found him downstairs at 6:30, already dressed in a charcoal suit, speaking quietly into his phone. No visitors without clearance. Nobody approaches Caleb. Nobody approaches Noah. He ended the call when he saw me. On the kitchen island sat 2 coffees and a cream-colored envelope stamped with a black wax seal. What is that? I asked. Something I hoped you would never need. You are having a terrible week with reassuring sentences. Mason almost smiled. Almost. Then he pushed the envelope toward me. Inside was an invitation to the Blackwood Foundation winter reception in Boston that evening. Beneath it was a typed agreement. For the next 48 hours, I was supposed to remain beside Mason at all public events, travel only in his car, and allow his security team to accompany me. This sounds less like a relationship and more like witness protection. For 2 days, publicly, I need us to appear completely normal. I stared at him. We are actually together. Why would we need to pretend to be together? Because people are watching this house. That erased every sarcastic response in my head. Who? I cannot tell you yet. Of course you cannot. Mason lowered his voice. Noah, I am not asking you to pretend you love me. I am asking you to pretend nothing between us has changed. That hurt more than it should have. By 7 that evening, a black luxury SUV carried us through downtown Boston while another vehicle followed 20 yards behind. Mason sat beside me, close enough that our sleeves touched whenever the car turned. He wore a silver ring I had never seen before, engraved with the same symbol stamped into the wax seal. Family ring? I asked. His hand closed slightly. Something like that. Another non-answer. Wonderful. The reception occupied the top floor of a hotel overlooking the harbor. The moment we entered, conversations shifted. People knew Mason. Not casually. They moved for him. Men twice my age shook his hand with careful smiles. Security personnel watched him as if he outranked everyone in the room. I suddenly wondered whether the quiet businessman I had lived with for 2 years was only one version of Mason Blackwood. Then an alpha in a navy tuxedo approached us. Mason, I heard there was trouble at the house. Mason's posture changed. You heard wrong. The stranger looked at me. His smile was polite, but his eyes lingered too long. And this must be Noah. Before I could answer, Mason stepped half a pace closer. Not possessive, protective. You can speak to him, Mason said evenly. but you do not interrogate him. Several nearby conversations went quiet. The alpha raised both hands. Just being friendly. Then be friendly. My pulse did something deeply inconvenient. I was furious with Mason. Suspicious of Mason. Possibly living above his secret prisoner. Yet when he quietly asked, "Are you all right?" I knew he meant it. Fine. His gaze held mine for 1 second too long. Chemistry was extremely rude during a crisis. His phone vibrated. Mason checked the message, and all warmth vanished from his face. I caught only 4 words before he turned the screen away. He knows Caleb is alive. Mason, we are leaving. His hand hovered near my back, without touching until I nodded permission. Then he guided me through the crowd, while 2 security guards closed around us. In the elevator, I noticed something protruding from his inside pocket. A folded document. At the top was Caleb's full name. Beneath it, in heavy black letters, were 2 words that made my blood run cold. Status, deceased. The dead man in Mason's pocket was alive beneath our house, and before I could demand an explanation, someone in the hotel lobby called my name like he had been waiting all night to ruin mine. Noah Bennett. Mason stopped beside me. I turned in. Saw Grant Mercer crossing the marble floor with the same polished smile I remembered from college. Grant had been my boyfriend for 11 miserable months, and my personal lesson in why charm should come with warning labels. Grant. His gaze moved to Mason, then to the security team behind us. So the rumors are true. You really did land a Blackwood. Good to see you have matured. Grant laughed. Still sensitive. Mason said nothing, but his attention sharpened. Grant stepped closer. People upstairs are saying Mason has some kind of scandal brewing. Missing records. Private security. An Omega who supposedly died. And suddenly you are attached to his arm at a foundation event. My stomach tightened. You should stop listening to rumors. I am worried about you. You were never particularly talented at that. His smile slipped. Several guests had followed us into the lobby, pretending not to watch. Grant noticed them too. Of course he did. He raised his voice just enough. Noah, you always wanted someone powerful to make you feel safe. Just make sure you are not confusing protection with ownership. The words hit exactly where he intended, because that was the question poisoning every thought I had about Mason. Grant saw my hesitation and smiled. Then Mason spoke. Are you finished? His voice was quiet. Grant turned. This is between Noah and me. No. It stopped being between you when you decided to embarrass him in front of an audience. Mason did not threaten him. He did not move closer. Somehow, his calmness carried more authority than shouting ever could. Noah does not need my money, my name, or my permission to stand in any room. If you cannot speak to him with respect, you do not speak to him at all. The lobby went silent. Grant gave me a bitter look. You really believe that? Before Mason could answer, I did. Yes. Grant walked away without another word. Mason looked at me. You did not have to agree with me. I know. Do you want to leave? There it was again. Choice. Always choice with me. Never, apparently, with Caleb. Yes. Outside, cold harbor air swept between the buildings. Mason removed his coat and offered it. I almost refused on. Principal. Then I was freezing, and principals were terrible insulation. Thank you. His mouth softened at the corner. You are welcome. Inside the SUV, I pulled the document from his pocket before he could stop me. No more distractions. Mason closed his eyes briefly. Noah. Caleb is alive. This says he died 18 months ago. Give me the file. Tell me why. Mason looked toward the driver, then back at me. Not here. Then take me home. His expression changed. We cannot go home. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Why? Mason's phone rang. He answered immediately. Blackwood. I watched every trace of color leave his face. When? Silence. Is Caleb secure? Another pause. Mason looked directly at me. Understood. He ended the call. What happened? Someone breached the property line. Is Caleb okay? For now. Then we go back. No. Mason, he is locked underground. Which is exactly why you are not going anywhere near that house. Anger finally broke through my fear. You do not get to decide that for me. Mason held my gaze, then nodded once. You are right. He told the driver to stop. Then decide. I stared at him. I am going back for Caleb. Mason was silent for 2 seconds. Then I am coming with you. 20 minutes later, our SUV turned onto the dark road leading home. Before we reached the driveway, My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Run. They know who you are. I looked up just as Caleb came rushing from the trees toward our headlights. He was free, and the terror on his face was not relief. He reached the vehicle, looked straight at me, and shouted, "Noah, you have to turn around. They were never looking for me." Caleb grabbed the side of the SUV and stared at me like my face had just confirmed his worst fear. "They were never looking for me," he repeated. Mason opened the door. "Get in." Caleb obeyed immediately. That frightened me more than if he had argued. Mason told the driver to keep moving, and the SUV accelerated past our driveway without stopping. "Start talking," I said. Caleb looked at Mason. Mason looked at me. "Not here." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "You have officially used up every version of that sentence." Mason went quiet. Caleb pulled back his sleeve, revealing the silver band around his wrist. "This is not a restraint, Noah. It blocks my scent." I stared at it. "Why?" "Because 18 months ago, I witnessed something I was never supposed to see. Powerful people were exploiting omegas through illegal contracts, using debt and family pressure to control them. I agreed to testify." My anger faltered. "Then why does your file say you are dead?" "Because Mason made me disappear." Caleb swallowed. "Legally, digitally, completely. If they believed I was dead, they stopped searching." I turned toward Mason. "The basement. A safe room," he said. "The lock was there because Caleb asked for controlled access while the threat remained active." "Then why did he say he belonged there?" Caleb winced. "I said Mason told me I belonged there until the hearing because it was the safest location available. I realized how it sounded after you left. I should have felt relieved. Instead, something colder settled inside me. You could have told me." Mason's eyes stayed on mine. "No, I could not. You keep saying that like it excuses everything." The SUV turned onto Interstate 90, Boston shrinking behind us. Mason removed the silver ring from his hand and placed it between us. "The Blackwood Foundation is not merely a charity." Caleb looked away. Mason continued, "My family controls one of the largest alpha councils in the Northeast. My father led it. After he died, the position passed to me." I stared at him. "You told me you managed family investments." "I do." "You forgot the part where you lead an alpha council?" "I wanted a life where my name did not enter the room before I did." "So you lied?" "Yes." No excuse. No clever defense. Somehow, the honesty hurt worse. "The reception tonight was not just a fundraiser," Mason said. "It was a council gathering. The ring identifies its acting leader." My mind replayed the evening. The careful handshakes. The security. The way powerful men had stepped aside when Mason approached. And our little 48-hour performance. Protection. From whom? Mason hesitated. Caleb answered for him. From someone. Inside Noah's family. The air disappeared from the SUV. "What?" Mason reached into his coat and removed another envelope. He handed it to me. Inside were financial records, old photographs, and my name printed across a confidential report. "Why am I in this?" "Because Caleb recognized you from a photograph connected to the investigation." I looked at Caleb. He nodded reluctantly. "I knew your face before you came downstairs." My hands went cold. "Who showed you the photograph?" Mason answered. "The man funding the contracts." "Who?" His voice softened. "Your uncle, Richard Bennett." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline that never came. Uncle Richard had paid my college tuition when my parents struggled. He sent birthday cards. He called every Christmas. "You knew?" I whispered. Mason did not look away. "For 4 months." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not because Mason had protected Caleb. Not because he was an alpha leader. Because every morning for 4 months, he had kissed my forehead, made my coffee, asked about my day, and watched me speak fondly about a man he secretly suspected. "You let me live inside a lie. I was trying to keep you outside the investigation. You do not get to decide which truths I can survive." Mason reached toward me, then stopped before touching my hand. "I know." I moved farther away anyway. My phone vibrated. Another unknown message appeared. "This is your last warning, Noah. Ask Mason what your family promised the Blackwoods before you were born." The message about a promise made before I was born should have terrified me, but what frightened me more was how quickly Mason understood it. He stared at my phone for one long second, then said, "Turn it off." "You know what this means." "I have an idea." "Of course you do." The bitterness in my voice made Caleb look toward the window. Mason simply nodded, accepting it. 2 hours later, We reached a secluded Blackwood property in western Massachusetts, a small lake house surrounded by pine trees and enough security cameras to make the word small feel dishonest. Rain hammered the roof as we hurried inside. Caleb disappeared upstairs with one of Mason's security officers while I stood in the kitchen, soaked, exhausted, and furious enough to forget I was shivering. Mason noticed anyway. He always noticed. Without speaking, he took a blanket from the couch and placed it beside me rather than around me. Even now, he would not assume I wanted his hands on me. That tiny kindness almost made everything worse. "Tell me about the promise," I said. Mason loosened his tie. For the first time since I had known him, he looked tired rather than controlled. "My father and Richard Bennett were business partners 27 years ago. Richard helped build the financial network that later became part of the council. And me?" Mason looked toward the rain-dark windows. "There was an agreement between our families. Not a marriage contract. Nothing legally binding. More like an expectation. If Richard ever needed protection for someone in his family, the Blackwoods would provide it." I stared at him. "So that is why you met me?" "No," the answer came immediately. "I met you because you spilled iced coffee on me at Logan Airport and then blamed the floor." Despite everything, I almost smiled. "The floor was slippery. You were walking backward. That is irrelevant." His mouth softened, then the moment disappeared. "I did not know who you were until 6 months after we started dating." My chest tightened. "And when you found out?" I panicked. Mason Blackwood admitting panic felt like hearing a mountain confess it was afraid of heights. Why? Because for the first time in my life, I had something my family could turn into an obligation. He sat across from me, leaving the table between us. My father raised me to believe affection created leverage. Friends could be threatened. Partners could be manipulated. Anyone you loved became a weakness someone else could use. That sounds lonely. Mason gave a quiet laugh with no humor in it. It was efficient. There was something painfully young beneath those words. I remembered every holiday he avoided discussing, every family photograph turned face down in his office, every time he became strangely quiet when I talked about home. "So you hid everything from me because you thought that was protection?" "Yes." "It was not. I know that now." Thunder rolled beyond the lake. I rubbed my arms, suddenly exhausted. Mason stood, then stopped. "May I?" I knew what he meant. After a moment, I nodded. He draped the blanket around my shoulders carefully. His hands never lingered. "Noah, there is something I need you to understand." Caleb was an obligation at first. Protecting the investigation was an obligation. You never were. I looked up. Mason's expression had lost every trace of the alpha leader from Boston. Then what was I? He swallowed. The first person I ever chose without asking what it would cost me. Silence stretched between us. My anger did not disappear. Neither did the hurt. But for one dangerous second, I wanted to cross the distance between us. Then Caleb appeared at the kitchen entrance holding an old photograph. "You both need to see this." He placed it on the table. Richard Bennett stood beside Mason's father 27 years earlier. Between them was a document bearing both family seals. At the bottom, beneath Richard's signature, was a handwritten line. "Protection transfers to Noah Bennett upon his 26th birthday." I looked at Mason. My birthday was 3 weeks ago. His face went still. Caleb turned the photograph over. Someone had written a second message on the back. "If Noah learns the truth, the Blackwood agreement ends." By 9 the next morning, someone had turned my relationship with Mason into evidence against me. Caleb found it first. He came into the lake house kitchen holding his phone so tightly his knuckles had gone white. "Noah, do not open social media." Naturally, I opened social media. My face was everywhere. Photographs from the Blackwood reception showed Mason guiding me through the crowd, his coat around my shoulders, security surrounding us. Another photograph showed me taking the envelope from him inside the SUV. The headline beneath it made my stomach drop. "Omega partner paid to protect Blackwood image during council scandal." That is ridiculous. Then I saw the document. Our 48-hour security agreement had been uploaded online, except someone had changed the first page. The edited version called me Mason's contracted romantic partner and listed a payment of $250,000. My signature appeared at the bottom. "I never signed this." "I know," Mason said behind me. He had entered without a sound. I turned the screen toward him. Apparently the entire Northeast does not. His phone began ringing. Then Caleb's. Then mine. Within minutes, Reporters were gathering near the private road outside the property. The story grew faster than truth could catch it. I was called a social climber, a paid omega, a convenient boyfriend hired to make an alpha leader appear compassionate while he secretly confined another omega. Then came the worst message, posted from an account belonging to Richard Bennett. My nephew has been manipulated by the Blackwood family, but he also accepted benefits he knew were connected to their arrangement. I stared at it. He is blaming both of us. Mason's expression hardened. He is isolating you. It is working. By noon, the Blackwood Council demanded an emergency hearing at a private conference center 20 miles away. Mason wanted me to stay behind. I refused. If they are going to call me a liar, they can do it while looking at me. The hearing room was packed. Council members sat behind a long oak table while attorneys, donors, and reporters filled the back rows. Grant Mercer was there too, because apparently humiliation traveled efficiently. Richard appeared by video from an undisclosed location, wearing the concerned expression he had perfected at every family funeral. "Noah," he said gently, "you do not have to protect Mason anymore." I almost laughed. "You forged my signature." Did I? The altered agreement appeared on the large screen behind the council. Then came photographs of Mason and me entering hotels, restaurants, foundation events. Ordinary moments rearranged into something ugly. Richard continued. Mason Blackwood discovered Noah's connection to our family agreement and maintained a romantic relationship with him for strategic reasons. Murmurs spread through the room. Then he delivered the final blow. And Noah benefited financially from access to Blackwood resources. Every face turned toward me. Grant looked almost satisfied. A council member asked Mason, "Did Noah Bennett know about the family agreement before this week?" Mason said nothing. 1 second. 2. 3. My heart sank. After everything, his silence felt like abandonment. Mason. He looked at me, then at the council. 5 seconds. 6. Finally, he stood and removed the silver Blackwood ring from his hand. He placed it on the table. Noah knew nothing. The room went still. "The document you displayed is fraudulent. The payment never existed. Noah never asked for my wealth, my influence, or my protection." Richard interrupted from the screen. "You expect everyone to believe that?" Mason did not even look at him. His eyes remained on me. "I expect nothing. I am stating the truth." The council chair leaned forward. "And Caleb?" Mason took a slow breath. "Caleb is under my protection because he is a witness, not a possession. Noah is beside me because he chooses to be, not because any contract placed him there." Then Mason turned toward the entire room. "Neither man belongs to me. Neither man belongs to this council. Neither man belongs to Richard Bennett." Richard's expression finally cracked. Mason pushed the family ring toward the council chair. "If protecting them makes me unfit to lead, choose another leader." My throat tightened. Mason had just placed generations of power on a table rather than let them turn me into property. Then Caleb stood in the back row. There is one problem with Richard's story. Everyone turned. Caleb raised a flash drive. "I have the original contract, and Noah was never the payment." Caleb walked to the center of the room with the flash drive raised between 2 fingers, and for the first time that day, Richard Bennett stopped looking confident. "The original agreement was never about Noah becoming anyone's property," Caleb said. "It was about protecting him from the person who signed it." The room erupted in whispers. Mason remained standing beside the council table, his Blackwood ring still resting beneath the lights. "Connect the drive," he said. The council attorney hesitated. Mason's voice stayed calm. "Unless someone here prefers a forged document to the original." That ended the hesitation. The files appeared on the large screen. Dates, signatures, financial transfers, the original family agreement. Then a series of records connecting Richard to shell companies that had funded the illegal contracts Caleb witnessed. Richard's face tightened on the video feed. "Those documents can be fabricated." "Correct," Mason said, "which is why I did not rely on them alone." He removed his phone and sent something to the council chair. A second file appeared. Independent audit records from 3 banks, timestamped correspondence, and verification from outside counsel. Mason had built the case quietly while everyone else had been watching the scandal. "The agreement was created because my father discovered Richard was moving money through organizations connected to vulnerable omegas," Mason said. He could not prove the entire operation then, but he feared Richard's family might eventually become leverage. Noah was specifically named because Richard had already begun placing assets in his name without his knowledge. My stomach turned. He used my name? Mason looked at me. Yes, that is what I was trying to confirm before telling you. Richard leaned toward his camera. Noah, do not listen to him. Blackwoods protect their own power. Mason finally looked at the screen, then explained the forged relationship contract. Silence. Mason continued. The metadata traces the altered file to a consulting firm paid by one of your holding companies yesterday morning. Another record appeared. Clear. Simple. Devastating. Richard's concerned expression vanished. This council has no authority over me. Perhaps not, Mason replied. But the federal investigators who received these records 40 minutes ago may have questions. The room went completely silent. Even Grant stopped pretending not to stare. Richard's video feed suddenly disappeared. No dramatic threat. No final speech. Just a black screen where his face had been. Somehow, that was more satisfying. The council chair cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwood, given this evidence, we can discuss restoring your position. Mason glanced at the silver ring. Later. This council needs leadership. And Noah needed someone to tell the truth when it mattered. I chose poorly when I kept secrets from him. I will not make that choice twice. Every camera turned toward us. I could practically hear tomorrow's headlines being written. Mason walked around the table and stopped several feet from me. He did not reach for me. He waited. The 48-hour arrangement was real, he said publicly. I asked Noah to stand beside me and pretend nothing had changed because I believed appearances would keep him safe. My throat tightened. Mason continued. That part was an act. What I feel for him is not. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. He does not owe me loyalty because of my name. He does not owe me forgiveness because I protected him. And he certainly does not owe me love because I love him. My eyes burned. Mason Blackwood, the man who had spent his life treating emotion like classified information, was saying this in front of reporters, council members, rivals, and everyone who could use it against him. I choose Noah Bennett, he said. Not because of an agreement made before he was born. Not because he is an Omega. Not because my family promised anything. I choose him because when every part of my life became about power, he was the one person who made me want an ordinary home, terrible airport coffee, and dinner at 7. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Mason's expression softened. The floor was slippery, I said. You were still walking backward. This time, I crossed the distance. I took his hand in front of everyone. Not because a contract required it. Because I wanted to. Caleb smiled behind us. The council chair looked almost amused. Then the large screen flickered back to life. Not Richard this time. A single document appeared from an unknown sender. At the top was my name. Beneath it were 3 words that erased my smile instantly. Second Blackwood Agreement. The words Second Blackwood Agreement stayed on the screen for exactly 6 seconds before Mason did something nobody in that room expected. He laughed. Not loudly. Not nervously. Just one quiet breath of disbelief. My father really did document everything. I stared at him. You know what this is? I think so. The council attorney opened the file. This agreement was shorter than the first, dated 26 years earlier, and signed only by Mason's father. There were no financial terms. No marriage arrangement. No ownership clause. Just a private amendment stating that if Richard Bennett ever attempted to invoke the original protection agreement for personal gain, every obligation involving Noah would immediately become void, while all evidence held by the Blackwood family would transfer to an independent trustee. Caleb leaned closer to the screen. Richard did not know about this. That was the point, Mason said. The final page contained confirmation that the evidence had already been transferred 3 weeks earlier, on my 26th birthday. Suddenly everything made sense. The anonymous warnings. Richard's desperation. The public attack. He had not been trying to activate some ancient agreement. He had been trying to frighten me before I discovered that my name had become the key to exposing him. The council attorney confirmed the signatures and timestamps. By late afternoon, Richard's accounts connected to the scheme had been frozen pending investigation. Caleb had been formally placed under independent witness protection, and every fraudulent claim involving me had been referred to outside authorities. The nightmare did not end with shouting. It ended with paperwork, verified records, and Richard losing the one thing he had spent years collecting, control. When the hearing finally adjourned, reporters crowded the hallway. Mason looked at me. Side exit. A month ago, I would have said yes. Instead, I held out my hand. Front door. His eyebrows lifted. Are you sure? You keep asking me that. I plan to keep asking. Good answer. We walked through the lobby together. Cameras flashed. Questions flew from every direction. Mason ignored all of them until one reporter shouted, Mr. Bennett, are you still under contract with Mason Blackwood? I stopped. Mason stopped with me. No, I said. I am here because I want to be. Mason's fingers tightened gently around mine. That was all. No performance. No carefully arranged image. Just a choice made where everyone could see it. 3 weeks later, Caleb moved into a protected apartment outside Boston under his own name. The basement safe room was empty. Mason stood beside me at the bottom of those 12 stairs while I stared at the door that had started everything. Do you want me to remove it? He asked. I considered the steel lock, the pale walls, and all the fear I had attached to this place. Remove the lock. Mason nodded. The whole door. No, just the lock. We carried it upstairs together. That evening, I found Mason at the kitchen island with 2 coffees and a single sheet of paper. Please tell me that is not another Blackwood agreement. It is worse. He slid it toward me. At the top, he had typed relationship terms. I looked down. Rule 1, no secret basements. Rule 2, no protecting Noah by lying to Noah. Rule 3, dinner at 7 whenever possible. Rule 4, either person may leave whenever he chooses. Rule 5 had been left blank. What goes there? Mason asked. I picked up the pen and wrote slowly. No pretending. Ever again. Mason read it, then looked at me with that small private smile I had once thought belonged to an ordinary man. Maybe it still did. He signed beneath my words. I signed beside him. Then he put the paper in a kitchen drawer instead of a vault. Months later, the Blackwood Council elected new independent leadership. Caleb began rebuilding his life, and Mason declined every invitation to reclaim the power he had surrendered. Our house became quieter. The hidden room became a wine cellar with a door that never locked. And sometimes, when rain tapped against the bedroom windows after midnight, I remembered the 3 knocks that had made me question everything. I had once believed love meant trusting someone enough to follow them into the dark. Mason taught me something better, and I taught it back to him. Love was leaving the door open and choosing, every single day, to stay.